Hello and welcome to this Red Gaming Tech video. Myself, Marta, where as always I'm here with the latest from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. So what I have for you today, my friends, well, we have a mixture of tech and gaming news for you, and we're actually going to kick things off with the price of GDDR6. As we have a very interesting report thanks to the guys over at 3dcenter.org. Now, of course, their article is going to be linked in the description below this video, but it is in German. My German is a bit rusty. I used to be really good at it actually, but enough to pick out enough. But what we actually have here is a report citing list prices from electronics components wholesaler DigiKey. And according to their findings, the 14 Gbps GDDR6 memory chips from Micron cost 70% more than 8 Gbps GDDR5 chips of the same density also from Micron. Now, GDDR6 is slightly cheaper if you go for 13 or 12 Gbps trims, but say for example with the RTX series, Nvidia have been looking to the 14 Gbps, and apparently the RTX 2060 is going to be implementing 14 Gbps chips in variants of that card that feature GDDR6 memory. And this huge difference in price probably explains why there's going to be variant, or allegedly going to be variant, should I say, of the 2060 that uses GDDR5. Just again, according to this report, graphics card manufacturers can save about $22 per card by using 6 GDDR5 chips instead of GDDR6. So just a kind of TLDR there, 70% more expensive from the same manufacturer. So what is actually causing this? Well, obviously GDDR6 is obviously the newer, better technology. That is obviously one of the reasons why it's more expensive. But obviously there's oversupply problems with GDDR5 as well, and obviously the fact that it's now out-of-date technology, so it's just not as desirable to manufacturers. So obviously it's just kind of sitting there, not doing anything, while GDDR6 is kind of hogging the limelight, as it were. Now, it's not exactly shocking that the newer, better technology is more expensive than the older one. That's kind of like saying the sky is blue and grass is green, but a 70% difference is a bit of an ouch, to say the least. But we're going to move from some less than good news to some actually better news for once regarding virtual reality. Now, of course, I have talked a lot about how I think VR at least has the potential to be a really sort of big next step in gaming in terms of, taking that move forward in technology, because, graphics are always going to keep improving, but eventually we are going to hit a sort of cap of how photorealistic we can actually get. So I do think VR potentially could be the next big thing, but obviously it is yet to really find its sort of foothold in the sort of mass market. But according to a Steam hardware survey, VR adoption is on the rise. However, it's not like it's gone from 1% to 10% or anything like that. It is going from 0.4 at the beginning of 2018 to 0.8 at the end. So technically it's a doubling, but we're not even seeing 1% of Steam users wearing VR, at least on the hardware survey. But according to Ars Technica, the percentage actually sits around the same as it is for Linux users. So if you look at Valve's claim back in October that Steam had roughly 90 million monthly active users, you could say that we have roughly 700,000 to 720,000-ish people using a VR headset. So it's good that we are seeing an increase in VR users, and this is obviously just on Steam, and also people on Steam who filled out the hardware survey, which, Lord knows how small a percentage that is, I actually don't know. But it's not exactly setting the world on fire, but we are seeing it slowly catch on. Now, interestingly, you might like to know that out of all those people that are using a VR headset, according to the Steam hardware survey, most of them are actually using an Oculus Rift, with the HTC Vive coming just behind it. So out of those VR users, we saw 46% being Rift users, and then the Vive being 40.82. So this is sort of a small sample of a small sample of a small sample going on here, but it's still interesting nonetheless. And again, I do truly believe that the VR has the potential, but there's numerous problems which I have discussed numerous times, and probably will continue to discuss them until VR either goes away or becomes the next big thing. And those are obviously the price, and there's several issues as well, like the amount of space required to actually use a VR headset, that sort of thing. So I think the main barrier to entry is the price and not really having enough games to warrant that cost, at least in my personal opinion, especially given that the motion sickness problems haven't really been ironed out all that well yet. Obviously the technology just needs some work. We've seen the first iterations, and we're going to see the technology improve and blah 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 blah, become cheaper, etc. But I think if you get a cheaper headset that has those motion sickness problems mostly ironed out, with games that actually make it VR headset like worth it, then yeah, we'll see it become a big-ish thing. Will it become like standard to have one, like it's almost standard to have a console these days? Probably not, but we'll hopefully see it become more of a thing than it is now. But let's move on from that piece of good news to something rather interesting regarding Half-Life 2. Did I just say Half-Life 2, I hear you ask? Yes, I did. As the writer of Half-Life Parts 1 and 2, Eric Wolpaw, has actually returned to Valve after leaving in February 2017. Now, where does this news come from, I hear you ask? Well, it is a alleged screen cap of an email conversation with Gabe Newell that has been doing the rounds on social media, so, you know, take this for what it's worth, but it does say, yep, he's back. Eric Wolpaw is back at Valve, but the website shacknews.com actually did some digging of the game Artifact, which has received some criticism, but that's a different topic entirely. And if you look at their article/video, which I will include in the description below this video, you will see Eric Wolpaw's name actually in the credits. So he's been back at Valve for some time. So that's definitely going to raise some eyebrows and raise speculation about those lovely 3 golden words, Half-Life 3. And undoubtedly the cries of Half-Life 3 confirmed are going to be ringing across the internet when people hear this news, but let's not do that just yet. I mean, perhaps it means his writing talents are going to be put into place for some sort of single-player game. I hope so. That would be lovely. Portal 3 would also be great while we're dreaming. But it's definitely got my eyebrow raised, let's just put it that way. So our next item on our itinerary today is actually regarding the Xbox One controller, as we might be seeing some upgrades to this in the near future, as Microsoft had actually rolled out some patents for the controller's triggers back in June of 2017, and these were actually granted in December of last year, so 2018 of course. Feels weird that it's 2019, but it is. Anyway, so both of these are for the triggers, as I've already mentioned. The first is for an input device with linear geared feedback, and the second is for motor-driven adjustable tension. And both of these are basically focused on giving you greater feedback when you actually pull the trigger on an Xbox One controller, which basically is intended to increase the level of responsiveness when the triggers are used. So what could these be for? Could it be for like just a general upgrade to all Xbox One controllers? You know, we could see this also applies to the Xbox One Elite controllers as well. Could this be for the controllers that are going to come bundled with the Xbox Scarlet? It could be any of these, and it could even be all of the above. I would naturally expect upgrades and improvements to the Xbox One controller for the Xbox Scarlet. I have to say the Xbox One controller is actually really nice. A massive improvement over the Xbox 360 controller in a lot of ways, and I actually do prefer it out of that and the PS4 controller, so more improvements to that, sign me up, to be honest. So let's move on to our final topic of today, as we have something that it's going to be a rant, guys. I'm just warning you now, as we have probably the worst loot boxes words in existence. There is a website by the name of MysteryBrand, and it was while just browsing the internet where I saw a report on PC Gamer. Of course, I'm going to include a link in the description below this video to their article. And basically what we have here is a website that launched last year, and is basically doing loot box style unlocks for actual physical items. So essentially how this actually works, I'm going to get into all this before I rant, you know, just to get the hard facts out of the way first. So basically you can sort of peek, and before you open a box you can see the possible content. So it's going to be quite desirable things like graphics cards and laptops and watches and cars and all this sort of thing, or it could be something like a phone case. For example, there's a $7 gaming themed box that could be something like, yeah, it's a keyboard something, or a cheap mouse, or it could be an Alienware laptop, yeah. And once you've opened the box, you can take the item that came out, or you can sell it back to MysteryBrand. So what you get is, it's kind of like playing a perpetual lottery here, because say you get an item that is worth more than you paid to open the box. Say you paid $7 to open the box, so you get an item that's worth $15, just for example. You can then sell it to then try it on a pricier box. So you're going to kind of put your, it's like when you're playing the fruit machine back at the arcade, or at least this was what I used to do when I was younger. I used to spend a lot of time in the arcade, so, oh yay, I just won £3 from the fruit machine. What's the first thing you do? You put it back in to try and get some more. And that is pretty much what they're doing here, tempting you to sort of sell the item back to them to open a more expensive box, and oh, you didn't win this time, oh. But the weirdest thing is you can even create your own boxes. For example, you can like do something really, really expensive, and you can also do something really, really silly and put them together in one box and set the rate of drop for the more expensive item, and obviously it will then spit out the actual price of the box. So there will be a link to the MysteryBrand website in the description below this video. You can go give it a look-see yourself, but I would highly avoid giving in any of your money, because, well, just look at it. Honestly, the text is really poorly written. The listed prices for a lot of the items are actually really inflated. For example, as PC Gamer point out, there's a Samsung 860 EVO 250GB SSD, which is listed for about $115, but it's actually $53 on Amazon. It's accepting payments from GTA Pay, which just speaks for itself, really. And amazingly, it is even revealing the email addresses of some of its supposed top winners. So if those were actual people, I would be a bit upset, to say the least. That's a pretty major privacy violation, not to mention GDPR and all that. So, yeah, and interestingly enough, the reason that PC Gamer know this exists is because it's actually being touted at the moment by none other than Jake Paul. Now, this website is honestly just so disgustingly predatory. I actually have no words for this, to be quite honest with you. It's obviously targeting people who are used to spending money on loot boxes. If you look at them, they look really similar to an item that you would unlock in a game or whatever. And undoubtedly, if you were to open one, I'm certainly not going to spend any of my money on this website. It would become like a super, satisfying animation where it makes it really cool to open, and oh yeah, get the little sort of like addiction thing going in your brain, like loot boxes and games do, and all that sort of thing. But this whole thing is just so shady and slimy. I just genuinely, I just can't. The fact that this website exists, it's both surprising to me and not surprising at all. I mean, I guess it makes sense from like a pure capitalism point of view. Like, oh yeah, these loot boxes, they're making the monies from the internet. Yeah, how about we do it with actual real things, and you can even gamble for them as well, which is probably going to get them in some hot water, especially in certain states in the US, because this is undoubtedly against the law in several of them. So the next time I talk about them, it may or may not to be to do with a lawsuit. We'll have to see. I'm certainly not going to sue them, because with what money? But they may find themselves on the bad end of a lawsuit in certain states, but we'll have to see. But this is just the probably the slimiest thing I've seen in a while, to be honest. I was about to say this year, but it's only the 5th of January, so let's give this year a while to take a big steaming dump on the face of society. Just it's early days yet, guys, early days. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.